Hello everyone, this is an introductory video to the V1. We want to just go through a few things, introduction to the detector itself, its capabilities, how to program it, and some suggestions on how to run the unit. So just as a quick overview of the unit itself, right here you can see this is the rear radar sensor. This red dot is actually the rear optical sensor for laser or LiDAR. This is the radar and LiDAR front sensor. That's the main sensor of the detector. So what we're going to do is turn the unit on here, and this is a 3.892, which is VR current firmware. Alright, we're just going to cycle through the main three run options. A is all bogies. This is the least amount of filtering. Basically, if it detects a signal, it alerts it. Now if you hold this button in, you'll go to little L. This mode is just used to help keep some of the K-band falses from being irritating. So basically, all it does is, if the signal strength is less than 5 bars, it'll sound it at a muted volume, which is set by this lever here. Then if you hold this button in again, this does the same thing, except it doesn't sound anything until it's got more than 4 bars on the strength meter. However, with both these settings, they will both eventually alert after a set period of time. So we're going to cycle through back to A. Now, I'm going to to put this in program mode, you want to turn the unit off, hold the button in, and turn it on at the same time. And keep the button in the whole time. And hold it until the screen will light up. Okay? Now, you just push the button to cycle through the options. So I'm going to push it. And you can see it's flashing the firmware right there, 3.892. Now I'm going to push it again and start cycling through the options. So option 1 is X-band. Now, I recommend keeping X-band on unless you live in an area that absolutely does not use it. If you travel a lot, it's best to keep it on. But if you don't travel a lot and your area doesn't use it, then you can shut it off. Option 2, this is K-band. Same thing. Generally this is kept on, but there again, some areas don't actually use K-band, but it's still widely used in the United States. Ka-band is 3. Laser or LiDAR is 4. 5. Now, I should back up a little bit here. All these options, the up arrow is the default setting. So you can go up to Valentine's website, and there is a printer guide up there, and I'll attach one to this post as well that's a little more printer friendly, and it explains each setting, how to turn it on or off. So up doesn't necessarily always mean on or off, it just means that's the default setting. So now in option 5, this is Ka intensity. Basically, I really recommend leaving this in the default setting or up, which is off in this case. This setting just increases the ramp up on weaker signals, so if you're not sure if you're going to take an alert seriously, it'll just kind of false and make it you think it's closer than it is. But I don't recommend this because the ramp up on the V1 is what makes it such a great detector. Option 6, now this is K-band, Ka false guard. Basically, this is turning the option of the J out on or off. This adds a slight delay to the V1 to filter Ka band signals. So basically what it does is it's looking for harmonics in the Ka band to decide whether or not a signal is from a leaky detector such as a Cobra, or if it's a real threat. So what will happen is, if it detects a Ka band signal, but it also at the same time detects a harmonic of that same frequency, it won't alert. Or if it does alert and then finds the harmonic, it'll actually do a J out, which is explained in the manual, and it'll basically just cancel out the alert. For most people, this is probably better in the default setting, which is on, because depending on where you live, there can be a lot of falses from Cobras and other detectors. So this is really a great feature, but if you're looking for the absolute best range and don't mind more falses, then turn it off, because you're going to get better response time and maybe even, a little more range, just because, it takes less time for the detector to filter it. Now 7 is K-band auto mute. Now this basically is off right now, and if you turn it on, which I'll actually go ahead and turn it on, you hold the button in and it'll change to down. Now basically the auto mute, what it does is this allows you to program those logic modes that we talked about earlier, little L and big L. So now basically that's just turning auto mute on, right? So now if we go to the next one, 8 is a muted button silence. So if you mute the detector, instead of the mute volume being controlled by this lever, it's actually just muted completely every time. There again, I think another great feature of the V1 is the fact that it has an adjustable mute. So I recommend leaving that default setting. So now let's go back to A here. A is bogey lock at muted volume. So basically you can have the detector lock on to a bogey at the muted volume instead of the full volume. Again, I really recommend just leaving this in the stock setting. Now, the next 3 settings are go with setting 7. So 7 turned on the K-band auto mute. Now B, C, and D, the next 3, are basically dip switches. And if you look at the link that I'm going to attach to this, you can see, or you can look at Valentine's website, look at their programming guide, you can see how basically to adjust the K-band auto mute. So for example, if you set B, C, and D all to up, you'll get a 10-second auto mute for K-band. So basically, if the detector detects a K-band signal that's less than 5 bars, it'll only alert it at a muted volume level for 10 seconds. But if you set B, C, and D at down, up, up, in that order respectively, you get a 30-second mute. And you can do it, there's 6 different settings there you can change it to, and basically you can adjust how long you want it to stay muted before it goes to a full volume alert. So I'm just going to cycle through these here, B, C, and D. Now we're going to move on to E. E is instant on awareness. So this is that 4 LEDs is not muted. Then I kept saying that if it's more or less than 4 LEDs, it would automatically alert. So this is saying that, if it is more than 4, then I'm going to alert at full volume regardless of what the time span is. I recommend leaving this default, which is it is on. So basically, if the detector thinks it's detecting instant on or a strong signal, no matter what the muting settings are, it's going to give a full alert. And for most people, this is best, especially since they have now released TSR, which we'll get to later. Now F is constant on awareness. So when a weak signal slowly increases up to 6 LEDs, it'll automatically jump to full volume. So earlier, if you just get an instant signal that's bigger than 4 bars on the unit, then it will automatically sound at full alert. But now if the signal is real weak and starts creeping up, it won't actually go to full volume until 6 LEDs are lit up. Now the next option is rear K-band muting. So the volume is set by the lever and it does not unmute. So basically, if you get a rear alert for K-band, it'll never go to full volume. It'll always stay at the level that you have this lever set at. And unless you have a lot of falses, I would recommend just leaving this setting alone as well. H is KU band. Unless you live in Europe, don't change this. KU band is just basically, they consider it part of X band, and it's something used in Europe, but it's not used at all in the United States. So just leave that in the stock position unless you live in Europe. Now J, this is a big one. This is pop mode. Default is on. When you start the detector up, you'll see it flash P-O-P. That is pop mode. Basically what pop mode does is it increases scanning of the K-band and 33.8 in Ka band. And what this is doing is it's creating more scans, or faster scans, in these frequencies to detect for pop radar. And pop radar is basically radar that is really short burst to try and defeat radar detectors. It was, the radar gun manufacturers developed this technology trying to defeat radar detectors. So Valentine and Escort and other companies have come up with pop mode, basically, to scan the frequencies faster to try and counter this pop radar. So there's good and bad with this. I personally recommend leaving pop on, especially if you're going to keep KA guard on. You can most likely leave pop on. Pop, now granted, pop is not widely used in the United States. It's very rare. However, it does increase the reaction time of the V1 on 33.8 and on K-band. Now, if you're getting a lot of falses and you're not worried about the reaction time as much and you're more concerned with the quiet detector, then turn it off. But if you're looking for better K-band and 33.8 reaction time, then leave pop on. The only problem with pop on, besides the increased falses, is it does very slightly decrease the reaction time on 35.5 and 34.7 in the KA band. So if those are really big frequencies used in your area, you might want to shut it off. But generally, it's not a huge loss there. It usually comes down to how many false alerts you want to put up with. Alright, small u is Euro X mode. Again, if you don't live in Europe, don't worry about this setting. That was Euro mode with small u. Euro mode with the line on the top is Euro X mode. The other one is Euro mode. Now there again, both of these settings, unless you live in Europe, you have no reason to worry about these. T. T is a new feature released by Valentine this year. Basically, it's their version of Escort's TSR. So what it does is, if you have traffic sensors in your area that are along the highway that send out radar burst, it can be really irritating. So they have added this feature to the detector to basically add an auto mute to the K-band that'll automatically keep you from getting those annoying alerts from the traffic drones along the interstate. So if you have them, put the arrow to off to turn it on. If you don't have them, leave it in the stock setting, because it'll actually reduce your K-band reaction time slightly. And unless you have these, then don't mess with it. Finally, the last setting is L. L is a brand new feature added to the V1, and it's meant for the legacy displays. So basically, now that they've released ESP on the V1, they needed to have a way to make sure that if a device wasn't working correctly, they could automatically force it to communicate with the device. So if you don't have an ESP device, leave it alone. Just leave it in the up arrow. But when the ESP devices are released and you're having issues with connecting with the device or with the legacy concealed display, then you can use this feature to force the V1 to recognize it. So that is all of the options of the V1. You'll find a lot of info on the V1 throughout this website on radardetectorforum.org, and I recommend just surfing around finding some things. But hopefully this will give you a little bit of an introduction of how the detector works, what the settings mean, how to program it, and etc. So to exit program mode, all you do is turn the unit off, and now you're done. Now you're back in regular operating mode.